Hey guys, today we're going to put in some joints on this Abe character I downloaded from Mixamo. So when you're doing joints, make sure you go to a single orthographic view to put in your joint chains first. We're going to go to rigging over here and pick our joint tool, and we're going to put our joints basically where our joints are. So we'll put in a hip. And actually, before I do this, I'm going to make sure I turn on X-ray joints. That's this button here. I'll leave open after the editor. So I'll put a hip, and I'm going to come out a little bit for the knee, and a knee, and I'm going to come down a little bit for the ankle, toes, and tips. Press enter. There we go. At this point, you might be tempted to edit your joint chain a little bit, which is fine. Just there's some rules to follow. Basically, at the end of the day, you want to make sure you only have one translate value, 0 rotations, 1's on scale, 0 rotate axes, and 1 joint orient, like this. So mine does a great job of doing that in the beginning. So sometimes it's easiest to, if you do need to edit it a little bit, just to restart the joint chain, and that's totally fine. If you don't want to do that, if you don't want to remake the joint chain, there's some tips here. So for instance, maybe I should bring this bottom part up a little bit. We might be tempted to drag it like that, but if we do that, it violates one of our rules here. It puts in a second value for translate. So I'm going to press undo. And instead of dragging up, I'm just going to use my scale tool. I'm going to bring that up. So it does the same thing, right? And it just affects scale here, but it doesn't put any translate values, so that's great. Once I do that, I do want to make sure I come over to Polymodel and just freeze transformations, right? And that clears out everything, and everything still looks good. The other way you can kind of edit stuff a little bit, like maybe I want that bend to be a little bit more distinct. We're able to rotate, but just rotate on one axis. So you want to rotate on axis that's already bent. So this knee's already bent this way, right? I'm going to rotate maybe just a little bit more, something like that. You see that it does put violates one of the rules again. It puts in a value here, but that's okay. I'll press freeze transformations, and what it does is it throws that rotate value down into joint orient, and it just adds to this value here. So again, we're still good because we just have one joint orient value right there. Cool. Now, with this character, he's kind of interesting. So if we look at him like this, he's kind of got an A pose, well, a little bit of an A pose here, right, with his legs going out slightly like a V, or like an A, bottom of an A. And so at this point, we might be tempted to just swing our legs up like that, but we're going to hold off on that. Oh, another note, by the way, is the top level joint, you can have any values you want on translate, rotate, scale, well, maybe not scale, but translate, rotate, joint orient, anything you want there, that's fine. But before we swing this leg into place, we do want to fix our joint orientations. So what we're going to do there is we're going to select hierarchy. So that selects the whole joint chain, right? It's equivalent to just coming in here and selecting all of them like that. If we just select the top one, it's not actually selecting everything underneath of it, even though it shows up green. So we make sure all your joints are selected. And then we go to display, transform display, local rotation axis. Cool. So now we see these guys. And you can see they're flip around a little bit. So we have our X's going down the chain, which is great. But our Z's are going off to my right, his left, over here, and then they're going off in the opposite direction over here. So we want to fix that. Basically, with these guys, the rule there is, or the guideline there is, just to make sure they all kind of match. And that way we know, like, okay, if we're adding to the rotation here, it goes that direction. If we're subtracting the rotation here, it goes that direction. Because if we went over here and went this way, it's actually a rotate Z is getting less and less and less and less, right? But if we go here and we rotate this way, rotate Z is getting more and more and more. So anyways, you just want them to have do the same thing. Adding to associate with like being outstretched and subtracting with being contracted, just pick one. Okay, so to fix that, not too bad. We'll select the top one, go to skeleton, orient joints, and I'll edit reset this. I like working my way down the chain. So I'll hit apply and probably nothing will happen, which doesn't, that's fine. Actually that one looks good. So the top one is basically oriented to the world. And then every joint beneath it is oriented to the one above it. So actually, I shouldn't say the top one's oriented to the world, because the top one's oriented to the world, it would look like that, which is not what we want. So I'll undo that. Okay, so the top one's oriented to the world, besides the fact that they have all these joint orients here, which kind of compensate for how it should be laid out. Anyways, making that too complicated. Basically, leave the top one alone, except just make sure that the Z is pointing off to one side, the Y is perpendicular to the bend going down. This one looks fine too. Edit reset, and I'll click apply, and probably nothing will happen again. That's fine. Over here, though, the Z's are pointing in the total opposite direction. So when something's pointing to the total opposite direction, what I usually do is just come down here to secondary axis orientation, and I just choose minus there. So it flips it over. If it was pointed in like 45 degrees, I would just flip the Y and the Z up here. But since it was pointed in the total opposite direction, I'm just going to switch the polarity. Okay, and that actually fixed the joint after that. So that's fine. I click apply there, and probably nothing will happen. That's okay. The very last joint's interesting, and the last joints on the chains are usually orient joint to world, so click apply. And orient joint to world, its world, this last joint's world is the one before it. So it's a little bit of a weird term to use, but just associate joint's world being the joint before it. Okay, cool, looks good. Now we can put the joint into place. So we can just select our rotate tool and slide it in, looks like that. We could even switch over to maybe a side view. And yeah, the side view is going to help a lot, because actually my hip's going to be like that. And like that. So right now the joint is considered planar, coplanar really, because all these joints are on the same plane. They're all in a nice straight line. It's okay if they're a little not coplanar, especially at joint 4. But really, since we're using IK handles on this, the top 3 should be, yeah, by its nature, 3 joints are always coplanar. But we want to make sure that those joint orientations really line up and look good. So now we can check our attribute editor. Everything looks good. A bunch of zeros. I mean, you can come in here, select hierarchy, freeze transformations again, just to double check or to clear out anything else. But yeah, that looks really good. So I'm going to continue on with the rest of the skeleton. Okay, so if we want to, we can even mirror this over, mirror this across. So we can go to skeleton, mirror joints, looks like that. We can look at the options for that real quick. So if I do an edit reset here, oh yeah, so that was not the default. Really, we should have some joint names in here before we start mirroring them across. So let's go ahead and you can go ahead and name these if you want. As far as joint names go, you can follow a little bit of a naming scheme if you'd like. You can look over here under joint labeling, add joint labels, and you can look at these for a little bit of an idea. So if we wanted to, we could even come in here and we can click this top one. We can say, okay, well, yep, that's hip. If we want to actually see the labels, we can show all labels. So that says hip. This one, label knee. This one, label ankle. Oh, and what's interesting is this list doesn't have ankle, but they do have foot. So really we can list all of those. But interestingly enough, tips, you usually don't have to have a name on them. To see an example of this, you can always pull up in HumanIK and import the HumanIK example. And you can always see what they've labeled theirs. Right? So we can go to skeleton, show labels on this. Right? So they've got hip, knee, foot. Oh, there is a toe. Toe, and none on the tips. So yeah, we can change that foot to, oh yeah, there you go. Toes down there. What's kind of cool is you can select up here, you can label this, it says left, right? So you can label all those left. And they're still not named over here. So what's kind of cool is you can come over here to skeleton, joint labeling, and you can rename joints from labels, right? Get rid of it, and it actually puts it in for you. Now what we can do is we can go to skeleton, near joints, we can go pull up in the options for it, and we want to near them across the, looks like the YZ, right? And let's mirror orientation. We'll click apply. It's made them all left on that side too, which is not great. And actually it messed up my my joint orientation pretty bad. So let's undo that. Let's switch it over to behavior. Yeah, so actually the joint orientation is fine on that, even though they're pointing up the joint chain. It's a little bit annoying though. So we could go in there and fix that. Yeah, so it's okay. We're going to leave the X's pointing up. As long as it's mirrored over from this side, it should still be fine. Cool. We will, however, change the side that these are on, so these still say left. So we'll come over here to skeleton, joint labeling, joint label right. That's good. And then we'll come over here and go to skeleton, joint labeling, rename joints from labels. Cool, looks like that. So far, we've got our right hip, our left hip. Let's go in here and do the rest of the body. So let's start with his left side again. Again, go to single orthographic view. Get rid of my dummy guy over there. In this case, we'll want to go to the top view. You can also select both of these, select hierarchy, display, transform display, and take off the LRAs, so you have a little bit clearer view. And for the arms, what we're going to do is over here under rigging, use a joint tool, and let's not worry about the fingers today. We'll come in here, we'll select, we'll actually start where like the clavicle is going to be to start our joints. And in this situation, arms like that, there's going to be a bend kind of coming around this way. So clavicle, so over here, shoulder, over about here. Again, a little bit of a bend, even though his arm's totally straight, that's okay. A little bit of a bend for the arm there, so that way IK knows which way to go. We'll come over here for the wrist, and for his hand, I'm just going to do one over here. Cool. Press enter. Alright, so that's the arm. Well, we're going to do the same kind of deal for the arm as we did the legs. So we can come over here, look over here, and the arm is way down in the ground. So let's switch over to a front view. We could bring the arm up a little bit, but we don't want to rotate it before we fix our joint orientations. So if your character doesn't have like a perfect T, don't rotate it yet. Fix joint orientations first. Okay, let's go to skeleton, orient joint, options. What's interesting is we can do a select hierarchy here, and you can toggle your LRAs visible over here as well. Hey, look at that. So they actually look good right off the bat. Boom, 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 boom. You have, oh, well, one thing we might consider is you could leave it like this and it'll work great, actually. But if you wanted to match up the major movement with the same axis we did the legs, you can do that. So just demonstrate that a little bit, like if we wanted the Z to be the major movement, you can do an edit, reset. Again, I like starting at the top. You can hit apply, nothing will happen. So if you want that Z to be where the Y is, again, flip 90 degrees as opposed to 180 like we did last time. You can flip the secondary axis there. So now our major movement, right, our arms, our elbows basically bend like that, right? No other way does the elbow bend. Our shoulders do all kinds of crazy things, but the elbow, now the major movement is lined up with the rotation along the Z. So that looks really good. You don't have to do anything else. Cool. We can label it just like we did on the legs. Let's make sure it's actually kind of in the mesh though. So you can rotate it a little bit now that our joints are good, but yeah, I think it's fine. Cool. So let's go ahead and label them and mirror them over. So the first one, skeleton, joint labeling, add joint labels. I like to tear it off like this. And that first one, what do they call it? They call it collar. So what do that collar? Do make sure you put on your joint labeling toggle, show all labels. There we go, so that's the collar. This is the shoulder. This is the elbow. This is the wrist. We may call it hand. Yep. If you ever want to see like a guide for this too, you can, again, always pull up Human IK. A little example here. I find myself doing that from time to time. Oops. He's got something funky going on with his foot. That's okay. So yeah, in his hand, what they've done is they have this wrist joint here, and then they also have this little one over here. I'm kind of curious what they label those, though. Let's take a look. So we'll go to skeleton, joint labeling, show all labels. Okay, yeah. So they call this hand over here, and they call this start of their fingers over here. Okay. So curious what they did. So we'll kind of adhere to. It doesn't hurt to. I'll back that up because it was matching up some funky stuff with the feet. Okay, so on that middle one on the hand, what we can do is label that just fingers for now. Joint labeling, add joint label, little finger. Cool. And then we'll go ahead and label that whole thing left. Joint label, add joint label, labels left. And we'll mirror it over. So skeleton. At this point, we just mirror joints directly like that. Maybe we can take a peek at our local rotation axis. They all look decent, except if you want to tidy up that last one, you go to orient joint. Again, the last ones, you can always just orient those to apply. It just lines it up with the rest. Cool. So X is going down the joint on this side, X is going up the joint on this side. That'll be fine. We can select that one, skeleton, joint labeling, add joint labels. That's his right, label right. And then we can go ahead and actually name the joints from the labels. So add joint labels, joint labeling rather, and then rename joints from labels. And do the same from this side, skeleton, joint labeling, and joints from labels. Cool. So now all of our joints here actually have labels on them. Great. So let's do the center of his body now. So what we can do for that is we can actually, instead of going into the front view, we go to the side view. This will center it up nicely. We just do one of these over here. So you want to pick a spot above the hips, but not too above the hips, to be a root. We'll go all the way up the neck with this. Before I do that, I'm going to select all my joints over here and just turn off the local rotation axis on those, because those get annoying. So let's select hierarchy, transform display, LRAs. All right, cool. See things a little bit more clearly. Heck, if we even wanted to, we could Control H arms all together so we can see that a little better. Okay, now we can switch over to our joint tool. And this will actually be our root. So put this over here. And we'll go up the back. It's important to put a little bit of a curve, like almost like an S into this as we go about this. You can put as many spines as you want. I'm going to do probably 3 before the collar. So we'll do a root. Again, I'm going to do a little of this S shape. Something like that. I'll probably go all the way up over to my neck over here. Face the neck. Face the head. Top of the head. Cool. All right, let's bring back our arms so we can visualize this a little bit. So the nice thing about doing that in that view is that it makes sure that the thing is nice and centered up. The joint chain is nice and centered up. And again, if you want to move any of the positions of these things, so again, it doesn't hurt to bring up the attribute editor. And actually, I am going to take this a little bit. You can press minus or plus to change the size of the manipulator. I'm going to move this one up a little bit just to space these out a little better. And move this one down. That's too much. Pick that one a little bit. Yeah, that looks better. And then I'll come down with this one a lot. Come down with this one. Right, and put that base of the head kind of back where it needs to be. Cool, and those show that line back up again. Awesome. Okay, cool. Now we can parent all these things together. Yeah, before we do that, we could label this again. Or we could also check the orientations too, which would help. So let's go to select, hierarchy, display, transform display, arrays. So we can take a peek here. Yeah, so the Z's kind of flip-flop around. So let's fix that. So skeleton, joint, options, reset. Okay. So again, I like to hit apply just in the first one just to make sure everything's lining up. The next one's going to be fine, but we do want to flip that Z over 180 degrees, so just switch the polarity on that. Looks good. Z's off to the right. We'll do that for that one too. So we'll go positive this time. And switch that one to negative. And on that top one, again, you can always just orient to world. It'll probably not change very much. Oh, good. There you go. Looks great. So nice and uniform. We can select the first one, select hierarchy, and we can toggle off the axis in there as well. We can go over here, press F, frame it up a little bit. and label them. So skeleton, joint labeling, add joint labels. So that first one we'll call root. We do want to actually see the labels, so show all labels. And then the next one, I'm going to tear off this menu. So let's see. The next one is going to be a spine. And the next one's going to be a spine. And the next one's going to be a spine. And this one's going to be a neck. And this one's going to be a head. And a lot of times the tips, just leave them on, they actually don't do much. Great. Looks good. Okay, so to attach all this, what we're going to do is we're going to, well, actually, before we do that, now that we have labels, we'll come over here to joint labelings. We'll just rename joints from labels. Looks great. So you can do this a few different ways, but the easiest way is to just select the two children and then select the parent and press P. Okay. And that actually connects them up. Another way to do that is just select right hip. Oh, that's funny. I have to rename joints from labels on that one. So select right hip, select left hip, and we're going to middle mouse drag these under center root, like that. So whatever you feel comfortable doing. I'll do the P route. Looks like just a spine that's close. Yay! Looks good. Okay, so that is how you can do some joints. You can double check all your joints one more time. Select the middle one. I'm going to display. I'm sorry, select hierarchy, display, transform display, local rotation axes. And yeah, things look great. The what's interesting is the Z's are up here and the Z's are down over here. Just when I mirrored it, that's what happened. And actually, that's okay. That allows you to rotate in one direction and actually have the arms come in or come out. Usually with legs, you may want to select, all of them, and have the legs actually go the same way both times. Versus arms, right? Arms will come in or out, right? So that's what happens when you have the Z's going up versus and down at the same time, and that's actually a good thing. Cool. All right, see you guys later.